This video is brought to you by Kingdom Maker. Lots of fun stuff to talk about today, so let's just get started. Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we've got a little bit of a old Metatron style video. We're going to talk about one specific type of helmet, the Frogmouth. There are a few reasons why I decided to talk about the Frogmouth today. The first one is, well, it's my favorite type of helmet ever, so I thought it should have a dedicated video on this channel. In fact, this is going to be just the first of a dedicated series of videos all on the Frogmouth. But the second reason why I decided to talk about it right now is because I've just purchased a Frogmouth. So here are a few very interesting pictures of the Frogmouth as it was being built by this absolutely fantastic armorer. And here are some pictures of the helmet fully polished. The helmet is complete. I'm just going to have to wait for him to ship it to me. Then it will take a few weeks probably, and then finally the helmet will be here. Now once the helmet is here, which is going to be really exciting as this is my very first Frogmouth, and again remember, it's my favorite helmet, so for me it's a historical moment. I will have a full-on unboxing and first impression on Patreon, because all of my unboxings are on Patreon and I always show cool stuff, like for example this full metal buckler. So if you like unboxings of weapons, armor, helmets, Albions, absolutely make sure to go follow me on Patreon. But apart from that, today I'd like to talk about the Frogmouth in general and why I believe it's both the best helmet ever made and the worst helmet ever made. So how is it possible that a helmet can be both the best and the worst at doing its job? Well, you see, whenever we do evaluations of specific helmets, we are of course evaluating the design, and we compare it to the things that both the helmet is supposed to do in a way and the person wearing the helmet is supposed to do. You see, each design, each choice made by the person who came up with this idea shows a direction in which the smiths of the time were trying to go, but also the generals, the army itself. Just like there are many different ways to skin a cat, one of the weirdest expressions in the English language, there are many possible ways to build an effective helmet. So some choices are generally speaking justified over other choices because of personal preference, but oftentimes because of what you're supposed to do with that helmet. On this video we're going to talk about what you're supposed to do with a Frogmouth and how early design, so the sort of Frogmouths used between, I want to say 1380 all the way up to 1420, and also later designs such as the typical late 15th century Frogmouth, similar to the one I will be wearing soon, why they went for specific choices that rendered the helmet highly specialized, and then we'll look at some very interesting historical curiosities that will blow your mind about some excellent examples. And now I'd like to take a moment to mention the kind sponsor that made this video possible, Kingdom Maker. What is Kingdom Maker? Kingdom Maker is a mobile game free to play on iOS and Android. This game offers in-depth customization and sim-like storytelling. It combines RTS, RPG and simulation gameplay to create a deeply immersive, massively multiplayer, medieval fantasy world in which players can play their own way. Now the game allows you to do many different things. Let me explain. You can customize everything from where your city is placed to how your nobles look, which is important for when you make kids in-game, as your heirs will inherit a randomization of their parents' look. As you progress in the game, you'll be able to do more things. For instance, as you reach level 10, you'll be able to raid other players' cities, which to be honest is my favorite part of the game. Nothing personal, of course. Talking about war, you can customize your army with unique champions that give specialized bonuses. Now, dear noble ones, if there is one thing about the game that is really important is the nobles, because the game has an entire noble system. The nobles represent you as your avatars, and you can use them for research, trading, combat, interacting with other players' nobles. You can also get a little romantic and make more nobles. You can send your nobles to explore dungeons for rewards. Now, a couple of things that I picked up as I was playing the game that I thought I should tell you are, first of all, the fact that any timer that is 5 minutes, you don't actually have to wait the 5 minutes. You can literally skip it. And when it comes to the nobles, well, they've got tiers of quality. So if you get a very low quality noble, like a rung level noble, well, you can always, sacrifice them in the volcano. When it comes to the combat, it's fun, simplified, Total War-esque combat with extremely customizable armies. Spectate any battle in real time or join the fun. See PvP fights announced in global chat and reinforce whoever you please. You can join alliances even before level 10 when you can start getting attacked, and you can get chests for being in an alliance, not to mention buffs to your city. Remember that the game is free on both iOS and Android, so what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to download Kingdom Maker, and big thanks to Kingdom Maker for sponsoring my video. Welcome back. As I was saying, the Frogmouth is a helmet specifically designed for the joust. This is something that anyone who understands helmets, medieval helmets, knows. But what does it mean to be highly specialized for the joust? Well, when we are talking about the joust, we're talking about the Joust of Peace, which is a tournament, but in a way, it's a polite festival. It's a way to celebrate very important times, and also a way to keep your knights, I suppose, trained in the event of a possible war. All sorts of high nobility participated in the Joust of Peace, including kings. And one of the things that you want to make sure absolutely when you've got a knight getting ready to receive a lance full force on his face is to make sure that that knight/noble will not die. Defense, protection are the top priority in this design. And that is one of the things that make it become, just one of the things that make it become my favorite helmet. This is full protection. You want more protection than this? Don't joust. Whether it be early forms, and even more so in later versions such as the one I'm getting, the humongous protection plate that you've got in the very front of the helmet, the brow of the helmet, is one of the less articulated plates that you'll ever see on a helmet. It is supposed to literally create a barrier of steel between you and your opponent. In fact, sometimes two barriers. More on that in a minute. In fact, we could say that that links to the second reason why I absolutely love the design, and it's the lack of humanity. It is a very dehumanizing helmet. Why? Because differently from other helmets, such as the Armored, which is another one of my favorite, which do follow very closely the shape of the human head in order to ensure to not have extra weight, extra metal laying around, but also making sure to give you good mobility. This helmet doesn't care about mobility. Horrible mobility on a Frogmouth, particularly later iterations, that were literally connected, bolted onto the breastplate and the backplate, meaning that you couldn't turn your head. Now, we already know that with medieval helmets, oftentimes knights, because they have less peripheral vision, couldn't really look to the sides as you would normally do using your eyes. They would have to use their head, a little bit like birds do. But with the Frogmouth, it's even more so, to the point that because of the fact you can't move your head, you have to turn your whole torso in order to be able to look to the side. But that's the thing. You don't need to look to the sides. Because of the fact that it's a specifically joust helmet, joust gear, you only need to look in the front, because you've got no one coming to attack you in the back, no one trying to attack you from the sides. You only need to go straight and think about what you've got in front of you. And in a way, that lack of the ability to move your head also helps you because it protects you from damage into the spinal cord. If you do get hit in the face by a lance in full gallop, it could snap your head back and crack your bone here. But if your head is not allowed to move because it's completely encapsulated in steel, then you do avoid that kind of injury too. Very intelligent. If you really look at it in a way, this shape makes it look a little bit like a cup, like a trophy. If you played Dark Souls, of course, you know that they use it for very specific enemies, very specific sentinels, and I think it's great because it really makes you look like you have a completely different anatomy when it comes to your head. Given that kind of helmet in Dark Souls 2 wouldn't work because it's too high. It's sitting too high, and unless the eyes of this creature are that high, you will be blinded as a regular human being. But still, the helmet is supposed to be suspended over your head, and so in a way, for giving that as an artistic license, it does make someone wearing it look like they have a very long neck. You either love it or you hate it. I love it. So talking about the defense capability of the front, I was saying that sometimes you have 2 layers. Oftentimes you have 2 layers. One thing that Dr. Tobias Capwell explained on one of Schola Gladiatoria's videos on the matter was when he was talking about the early Frogmouth used by Henry V. We don't know if Henry V actually used that one, but we know that it belonged to him. And this helmet was very special because it still has an incredible level of defense when it comes to the front, because you don't only have one plate, you have 2. The inner plate of the helmet is a 3 millimeters thick plate of metal. That is then reinforced by a secondary reinforcement plate that wraps around the helmet all the way from the left to a big chunk of the right, which is, hold on your hats, 9 millimeters thick. 9 millimeters. In between the 2 plates, you also have 2 millimeters of vacuum, of gap, which Dr. Capwell was explaining that originally, just like in other extant examples, was filled with a liner. Interestingly enough, this liner wasn't actually used as a shock absorbent, but as a noise absorbent, so that you wouldn't ring like a bell. Link to the video in question in the description. All of that is absolutely fantastic, but imagine that. 13 overall millimeters of protection between you and the lance that is hitting you. That also explains why this helmet in particular was actually made of iron, garden quality iron. It wasn't steel, it wasn't heat treated, of course, and that could surprise, because you could think, well, if it's something that comes out of the royal armory, I mean, a king could afford anything he wanted. Why didn't they make it of high quality medium carbon heat treated steel? And the reason is, with that thickness, it doesn't matter what metal it is. Iron will do the job. Nothing is gonna go through that. Nothing medieval, at least. And so there would be no reason to waste good quality steel on that. But this connects to my next point. Frogmouths were very popular with kings and very high nobility. A king can afford anything he wants. Any piece of technology that can protect him during a joust, he can afford. So the fact that many did choose, kings and princes, to go for the Frogmouth speaks to me as to effectiveness of the design. By my earlier point, if you want 100% safety, don't joust. But the Frogmouth really is as close as it gets. So because of all of these characteristics and the fact that many kings and princes chose to use Frogmouths during these events, even though sallets were available, armets were available, tells me that the Frogmouth was indeed the best when it comes to the joust. But because of the fact that it was so specialized, in my opinion, it also makes it the worst possible helmet you could ever wear if you were to use it on the battlefield. Battlefield armor is not supposed to make you invulnerable. And this is something that people that don't really understand how armor works but still want to kind of point out and say, aha, I could find that there is a gap, aha, the armor is not invulnerable because there is that gap. People that do this don't understand that armor was never supposed to make you invulnerable. If you wanted armor to have 0 weaknesses, 0 points of vulnerability, if armor had to give you perfect protection, you would need to wear a cube of steel. You would have to put yourself inside a complete cube of steel, welding the door shut. A suit of armor, a harness of any period really, is a complex balancement of priorities. In other words, whenever you raise protection, you decrease mobility, the ability to breathe, vision. Whenever you increase mobility, you will lose some protection. Understanding that fine spot, which also has to do with personal preference, not just this is better than that, and cultural preference, finding that sweet spot really speaks about the incredible skills of medieval craftsmen, both as single craftsmen and as guilds. And it also speaks about up to what point and to what extent medieval nobility and professional combatants, not just the nobles, would deem or consider something to be a reasonable risk. Because I think that particularly when you compare armor and helmets in this case to the sort of armor that sport fighters, any sort of medieval full contact combat that we do in our day and age, the sort of extra padding that we normally see speaks to the sort of risks that we are not ready to take, particularly when compared to medieval soldiers. A Frogmouth would be absolutely horrible in a battlefield situation. You couldn't move your head, you couldn't see very well, but also don't forget about the amount of time you're supposed to wear something. That also needs to be combined within its design. In a jouster piece, you're never supposed to wear your helmet for longer than 30 minutes at a time. A battle, it can go on for hours, even days. So wearing something that is going to, excusing the pun, wear you out is not a good option, and that is again one of the reasons why the Frogmouth would be really bad on a battlefield. Now given, if the Frogmouth was such a horrible choice for a medieval battlefield, why do we see it in iconography? And I think that in order to answer this specific question, we need a dedicated video. So if you are interested in this question, or if you know the answer, let me know in the comments below. But that will be one of the topics I will cover with my next episode on the Frogmouth. Alright noble ones, well I hope that you enjoyed this dedicated video, old style Metatron video. If you did, please remember thumbs up, and if you're not yet members of this community, become a noble one. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. Don't forget to download the game Kingdom Maker using the link in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.